Hey now, we are getting over, and I am the Silver King, Adam Silverstein, here to lead you through these hard times. Dada, with episode 628 of your favorite professional wrestling podcast. That's right, Getting Over is back once again, and it is Thursday, so you know exactly what that means. We are here to break down everything that happened over the last week across NXT and AEW. NXT is still building to No Mercy, made a lot of progress toward that end this week, while AEW is just under 2 weeks away from AEW All in London, and we do have some news about that to kick off the show. But before we even get to that, allow the Silver King to remind you that the Getting Over Wrestling podcast
is all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time, leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it here on the show. Please also remember to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news, analysis, highlights, all of that good stuff. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You will get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant recaps for every major show, and exclusive news posts on Friday. Again, that is buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Now, we are kicking this show off as we normally do. We will start with NXT, then we'll move to AEW, the penultimate Dynamite before AEW All In. And all of that is still to come.
But I'm afraid I've got some news.
Just a couple hours before we taped the show, AEW announced that All In Texas is set for Saturday, July 12th, 2025. Not only that, they will go back to London for All In 2026. Now, this should be, as far as I'm concerned, a successful show. AEW has made somewhat of a second home in Texas, particularly with Chicago. I don't want to say it's ceded back to WWE, but it has been to a degree. It's not so much that they ever dominated that market, but they had the key piece, let's say, to the Chicago market. Obviously, that has since changed. But they've taken like a foothold in the Arlington, Dallas, Texas area, and they've run so many major shows in that state and in that particular part of the state. They also currently have the residency in Arlington at the Esports Arena. So this makes a ton of sense. Now, by putting All In July, it does get a jump on what will likely be a 2-night WWE SummerSlam next year. And that would be necessary because AEW needs to go first if it's selling a domestic stadium show. There's also a chance that SummerSlam is not domestic next year. We'll talk about that in a second. But by doing it in July, All In also provides a gap where All Out could theoretically go, let's say, mid-August, and you get a full month breath between those shows, as opposed to 1 week like it was last year or 2 weeks like it is going to be this year. Now, the capacity for Global Life Stadium, which is the home of the Texas Rangers, so it's a baseball stadium, looks to be around 40,000. That is going to depend on stage and floor setup. But that number, I mean, I would call it achievable as long as AEW can stem the attendance and ratings patterns that they currently find themselves in. They could always buck the trend for an individual event, just given the uniqueness of it being their first stadium show. But I would say when you're looking at attendance and ticket sales, anything above 30,000 is going to be really good. I think 40,000 or above would legitimately be great. It depends on what the capacity is, not the opening capacity, but the final capacity. We'll find out as ticket sales go and as they start building that show really over the next 11 months. Now, whether this indicates something with WWE, I can't say for sure. Maybe they are planning to hold WrestleMania 42. That's the 2026 edition in London. Or maybe they're going even further and they're going to be doing it SummerSlam 2025, almost to test the market, where if that works in 2025, then they go to London in 2027 or 2028 for WrestleMania, something like that. I would not say this confirms it, but given the teases from WWE and given the fact that All In is moving specifically back to the States in Texas for 2025, it does seem like that might be the case. And you may say, well, Silver King, how do they know what the other is doing? They know. Both from ticket sales companies and stadiums, everyone talks. And AEW has a pretty good idea when WWE's events are going to get scheduled and vice versa. That's why you've seen some scheduling the way it has been through both companies over the last couple of years. So at the end of the day, AEW All In Texas, just outside of Dallas in Arlington, that is set for Saturday, July 12th, 2025. And I'll tell you again, off the bat, I'm expecting it to be a pretty damn big success, but we'll find out once tickets go on sale. We'll see what the appetite is for a stadium show in the United States, and we'll see where AEW is as a company this time next year. Obviously, the big TV rights deal that's going to get announced pretty soon. It seems like Tony Khan is probably saving that until the week of All In, if not announcing it during All In. I'm not sure what the plan is, but it's pretty clear it's coming in the next couple of weeks. Maybe they're going to do it in between All In and All Out. That's also possible. But that's going to be the next major announcement. And as I've said on the show multiple times, once they get that TV deal, they're going to get an increase. They will be profitable. The question, of course, will be how profitable and what can they do from a business standpoint to kind of sustain the ratings losses, although those become less important once you get a new TV deal, because that's the reason why you need ratings to get the TV deal. It's not like you get less money if you get less ratings during the course of a deal. But we'll see if that trend changes, and also the ticket sales, which clearly are going down on a pretty consistent basis. Nevertheless, big news for AEW to kick off this show. Now, with that in the books, we're going to move into our breakdowns of NXT and AEW, discussing everything that happens on television across both brands. We will start with NXT as we always do and have AEW as the tertiary segment on this episode. There are timestamps in the episode description, so if you hope to jump between one or the other, you do have that opportunity. As always, though, I hope you listen to the entire show. So Wes Lee opened NXT backstage, answering to his heel turn by saying that it's time to start taking what's his. Ethan Page then commandeered the microphone with an all-ego logo flag and did a walk-and-talk introduction of himself. Page held the title Ric Flair style, putting himself over while naming potential opponents and why they won't defeat him. After calling it NX Me, Page was cut off by Joe Hendry doing his normal shtick with his own mic flag. Page told him to go back to TNA because he's almost worn out his 15 minutes of fame. Hendry wanted the NXT title, saying even legends believe in him, and he'll gain Page's belief when he beats him. Then he sang to end it all. And it seemed like the segment was over, but he got straight up blindsided with a super kick from Wes Lee, who was wearing all black. I would say this was one of the better openers that NXT has put on recently. Wes closed last week with a huge heel turn, so starting him as part of the main event scene to begin the show with showing off his new character, that was compelling to me. Page probably had his best overall night on the mic, just commandeering the ring, leading the segues between each part of the segment. Neither he nor Hendry said anything that notable. It was both of their normal shtick, but it did set up an interesting and PLE-worthy title match. I thought coming out of it, it might be a triple threat, but what transpired later in the show made it clear that would not be the case. So we got Trick Williams, who had a promo package saying he will solve the problem of Pete Dunne eventually, just like he did Carmelo Hayes and Ilya Dragunov. Williams also said he got jumped at 18 years old in college over fellow football players being jealous of him balling out. They threw rocks at his car with him inside, but he followed them to the dorms and popped off their asses 1-on-3 and basically got his ass beat. He took them out one by one over the rest of the year to get vengeance. Trick promised to figure Dunn's ass out one way or another and asked for a rematch. Dunn live backstage said there was no chance for a rematch because Williams has a long ways to go to get back to his level. Then he decided to shift his focus to winning the NXT title. Now, whether that Trick story is true or not, I'm going to assume that it is. It lent itself to a more impactful promo than he has cut in a long time. Williams has mostly been a cool, polished babyface, at least to this point. He's badly needed some grit and edge, and we're able to see that through this promo package. Really for the first time, I would say. It's a nice turn for him. Hopefully something that is built upon going forward. Wes opened hour 2 of the show saying he surprised even himself with the turn last week, But Zach Wentz let him down a second time by losing their title match. The first time, of course, coming a couple years ago when everyone felt bad MSK ended, wished well for Wentz, and subsequently assumed that Lee would struggle because he's always just been a tag team guy. He said Wentz quickly reunited with Trey Miguel and abandoned him, while Wes literally broke his back to soar in NXT. Wes claimed he was the one who carried Wentz and specifically took care of Zach through their careers, and he's tired of him because where he wants to go, he can't have the Rascals riding his coattails like they did when they came back to WWE, only to get a rub despite being signed to TNA. Wes was prepared to fight Zach, assuming it's going to happen at No Mercy. Then he promised to show none of it will matter because he's going to beat the hell out of him. He said Wentz can go back to being a TNA wrestler while he focuses on the NXT title as a WWE superstar. Then he wished Wentz all the best in his future endeavors. Hot line that unfortunately got a mediocre reaction. Dunn interrupted, saying he was impressed with Wes, but his eyes are fixed on the NXT title as well. That led Hendry out from the crowd. He shoved Wes into Pete. All three brawled, and then they got separated with no immediate resolution. I thought this was an interesting yet somewhat frustrating promo because the crowd was silent, and they didn't exactly react to Wes. Now, perhaps that was because they were intently listening, or because they don't view him as much of a heel yet. But it was oddly silent for most of the segment. And I thought Wes did a fine job on the mic overall. I would even say strong. It was probably one of his better promos, start to finish. But the final lines could have been delivered so much harder and written better. You're going to be a TNA wrestler. Fine. I'm going to make myself a WWE superstar and win the NXT title. That should have been the line. The future endeavors part hit, but again, didn't really get the reaction that it should have. The crowd kind of sucked on Tuesday. It was low energy. It did not seem to be the normal NXT crowd. It's possible that it was, and they just didn't react to what was being given to them from a creative standpoint. It just seemed to be different, and it didn't pop and get as loud as it normally does, again, with the exception being the main event, which we will, of course, talk about coming up in a bit. Going with the Dunn and Hendry attacks obviously suggests a triple threat number one contendership was forthcoming, and that was set later officially by Ava. That's fine for Dunn and Hendry, but Lee shouldn't have assumed a match with Wentz at No Mercy while simultaneously saying he wants an NXT title in a segment meant to build a triple threat. Because the winner would contend at the same No Mercy show. So Wes is assuming he's going to fight Wentz at No Mercy. Oh yeah, by the way, I want a number one contendership and I want to fight for the title at No Mercy. That's a logic gap that could have easily been avoided. Ava and her assistants announced a gauntlet eliminator with the competitors chosen at random, the winner becoming the number one contender for the NXT women's title at No Mercy. Stevie Turner took all the credit for the idea. Mr. Stone protested. Ren Sinclair, Adriana Rizzo, and Sol Ruca were the first three. Fallon Henley, JC Jane, and Jasmine Nix. They later got into an argument with the Metaphor ladies while in makeup chairs, threatening to take each other out if they wound up in this match. WWE earlier Tuesday trademarked Fatal Influence, which sounds like that's going to be the name for this trio. And that unfortunately means they're staying together despite remaining a completely nonsensical group. The final three names in the match were Jada Parker, Kendall Gray for some reason, and Carmen Petrovic. Ava set the match for next week. So the field leaves something to be desired, no doubt about it. Ruka should be the obvious favorite since she's the babyface and Roxanne Perez is a heel, but Parker is the one who this story has largely revolved around. Plus, Sol just lost her North American title opportunity. So I'm assuming Jada gets the W and we get heel versus heel at No Mercy. What I'm most curious about is the match type. I hope a gauntlet eliminator is not just a gauntlet match and that there's a more complicated nature to it. Ideally, there would be timed entries and ongoing eliminations until there's just one person left. Basically, Elimination Chamber, but without the chamber. That would be an improvement over the normal predictable gauntlet match. And I think it would be really interesting to watch, despite, again, some of these names really not deserving to be in this match. Roxanne Perez later cut a promo at Ava, saying she made herself a star in similar matches and is excited to see them fight it out next week, though the winner will still fall to her and wait a long time before they have a chance to become champion. The Roxy heel turn, it was rough at the beginning. I know some people have an issue with her high-pitched voice and using that in a heel role. I think she's been doing a fantastic job, really. Completely grown into the character, figured out her speaking style. She stands strong as a successful champion. She's following up her words with actions, actually winning these matches and not really doing it by cheating or anything like that. So she's been built real strong. I love the title reign. I like her character, and I truly don't understand the problems people have. Brindley Reese wished Carmen good luck after this segment, with Izzy Dame upset listening to them, saying she deserved to be in the match. Apparently, all three of them did the Nashville tryout at SummerSlam a couple years ago, so they're familiar with one another from the jump. That led immediately into a match for the latter part of the show, Reese against Dame. Brindley hit a nice cartwheel lariat, but ate a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker and a spinebuster-style Liger bomb. Dame kicked through Reese's chest when she tried another cartwheel lariat before coming back with a twisting scoop side slam for the win. It was a nice finisher by Izzy, and probably the best match of both of their careers, which makes sense because they've likely trained together and rehearsed that multiple times. Still not really seeing it with Brindley, but Izzy has size to go along with improving skill, so there might be something there eventually. The Heritage Cup was on the line, Tony D'Angelo defending against Charlie Dempsey. Ren Sinclair interrupted the guys' training, happy to be part of NQCC, and realizing Tavian Heights is actually wrestling in Japan. Dempsey countered a spinebuster with a cradle submission in round 1, but ate forget about it, taking the first fall early in round 2. He caught Tony with a big knee after the round 3 bell, and Ren slapped the shit out of him to kind of psych him up. Dempsey dodged D'Angelo into the top turnbuckle and then caught him with a tight jackknife cover to even the match in round 4. It was super slow and boring to this point, but round 5 was far better. Tons of big moves and counters. Stacks took out Miles Bourne ringside. That distracted the referee and allowed Sinclair to trip D'Angelo on the ropes just as he was set for a superplex. Dempsey followed with a butterfly suplex bridge to win and regain the Heritage Cup with a 2-1 victory. I wouldn't say that was the best move for a bridge. The butterfly kind of keeps the shoulders up, but the camera hit it well. The guys did fine work. Ren was the star of both segments. Moving the Heritage Cup out of D'Angelo family back to NQCC makes all the sense in the world. It just fits their aesthetic better. Also, it's pretty clear D'Angelo is going to be going after something else, and we will talk about that pretty much right now. The North American Championship was on the line. Oba Femi against Otis.
Oh, we got two big meaty men bumping me tonight.
In a turn of events from last week, D'Angelo, while he was cutting a promo backstage, saw Femi step right in front of him and cut a powerful one on Otis. So clearly Tony's going to go after that title, likely at No Mercy. Otis wore a similar vest to the one he had in Heavy Machinery. Femi crushed him multiple times in the corner for a surprising 2.9 finish. Akira Tozawa screamed at Femi from the apron. He ate a massive chop to the chest that gave Otis a second win by proxy. That included a huge Vader bomb, but Oba took Otis off the ropes for a huge Liger bomb, and he retained the title. I wouldn't say it was a great match by any means, but the entire idea was for Otis to give Femi like a different look opponent that could match, I don't want to say his size, but his strength and weight, perhaps. This certainly wasn't good enough to get a star grade, but it is definitely getting 4 slabs of beef.
Big meaty man slapping meat. That's what I want.
He don't want no water. He don't want no bread. All he wants is meat.
Lola Vice put over Kalani Jordan for successfully defending the North American Championship when they came across Tatum Paxley depressed, playing with her dolls. Lola walked over to check on her, saying everything was going to be okay. Tatum threw a fit, saying no one is friends with her. She got jealous of Vice, so it seemed like she basically decided to challenge her. So we got Vice against Paxley. Jordan was on commentary. Wendy Chu attacked her from behind with a sleeper hold from over the barricade. Tatum had Lola in a single leg crab. She released it, seeing what was happening ringside. She avoided a Lola kick and hit her awesome finisher. I don't even know what to call it. But for some reason, she didn't go for the cover. Instead, she immediately went for a flying nothing off the top rope. Vice dodged it, then caught her with a spinning back fist, rolling out of the landing for the win. She picked Tatum up after the bell, gave her a side hug, and Wendy held up the women's North American title. The match was kind of a head scratcher, the finish. I guess Paxley has used the 450 variation as a finisher, like she's used it occasionally, but it's odd that she went from this huge move that has ended matches for her before, right to the top rope without even trying a cover, in a sequence that again has defeated prior opponents. Lonnie was super rough on commentary. Wendy's attack was well done. Bit of a mixed bag here. Interested to see what Lonnie and Wendy looks like, and also where Tatum fits into everything, because it just seems like she keeps getting TV time, but doesn't actually get real opportunities when she's one of the most experienced and really one of the most talented women in the entire division as it stands right now. The tag team championship was on the line. Nathan Frazier and Axiom defending against Chase U. The champions backstage said their disagreements are behind them. They're back on the same page, completely locked in, ready to defend the titles. Chase U got pumped up before the match with Duke Hudson and Riley Osborne apologizing for their initial reaction last week. They expressed confidence in Ridge Holland and Andre Chase. Ridge said he was feeling thankful he would do whatever was possible to bring the titles home. And this was the main event of the show. Holland went on a wild hot tag run with double underhook suplex to Frazier and a pickup rotating flatliner to Axiom. No idea where that came from. The champions had a frog splash and 450 in succession for a false finish on Ridge. Chase U combined for a tandem double stomp power slam for a broken fall. Frazier murked Holland with a slingshot tope. After some near friendly fire, they combined for the superplex golden ratio brainbuster combo. That got a surprising legitimate false finish. Chase U came back catching Frazier with a combo backstabber powerbomb. Haven't seen that before, for another false finish and a legit holy shit chant. Axiom caught Holland with an avalanche Spanish fly, but Andre Chase pulled Frazier off the top rope into the side of the announce table. That was during a Phoenix splash attempt. Axiom knocked Chase off the apron with a golden ratio, only for Holland to take his head off on a lariat and hit the cradle DDT to crown new tag team champions in what, folks, was just an absolute banger of a match. Chase U stormed Holland in celebration. There was the whole Chase U party in the ring. The entire student section filed out, tons of confetti. It was quite a sight. It lasted multiple minutes to end the show, which really allowed the moment to sink in rather than NXT just being rushed off the air. And frankly, it was quite a moment, despite not being the result I wanted going in. Holland cradled the title like it was truly meaningful to him in reality. I bet that was the case, given all the trials and tribulations that he's gone through throughout his time in WWE. This was probably the match of his entire career. And I left it thinking again that Fraxium, they're the best tag team in all of WWE, not just NXT. There's something special about them together. What happens next is going to be curious because they made a point of actually being on the same page the exact night they lost the titles. Could they get called up to the main roster? I don't think it's impossible. Those tag team divisions need an injection of life. The main roster does need talent that can flip around. Now with Ricochet gone, and Nathan Frazier and Axiom can do exactly that. Their 124-day reign, it was the second longest since Imperium back 3 years ago. I'm left trying to figure out why it ended, because they were kicking major ass every week. They were the best part in ring of NXT. The tag team division was in the middle of being revitalized. Now they've dropped the titles. The only idea that I can manage on to the why is perhaps Motor City Machine Guns are actually starting in NXT instead of the main roster. And if you're doing that, then Chase U being transitional champions, that would make a lot of sense. If not, it feels like the titles were taken off the strongest team on the brand for no significant reason. But like I said, it was quite a moment. Chase U was immensely over. It paid off the Holland storyline with achievement. Now even more focus can find that faction in all of their entertaining storylines. I went 4.25 stars A for the match. The fun factor was even higher than that. Fraxium, they've been putting on fantastic main events for quite some time. And like I said, I'm really, really curious what's going to happen now. Brooks Jensen got a promo package relating that he hit rock bottom and didn't believe anyone had his back until Shawn Spears stuck his neck out for him, leading to his second chance. The camera pulled back to reveal that every word Jensen said was at the direction of Spears, who was basically looking for praise to be heaped upon himself, almost as if Brooks was a bit brainwashed. So now we have a natural story for Josh Briggs. When he returns from Pro Wrestling Noah, the N1, he can break his brother out of whatever hold Spears has on him. I think it's pretty interesting, and it was better than expected. Malik Blade and Nidra Sanofi were sad watching the segment. They called Jensen a lost cause. Hank and Tank were then excited to get a match against the Good Brothers, given their success hosting Great American Bash and that brawl from last week. That all is coming this next week. Ashante the Adonis was trying and failing to rizz up a couple women when he noticed Dion Lennox getting attention from two others, so he stepped in the way, saying game recognized game, thinking Lennox was faking reading a book to attract the ladies. Lennox said he was reading It Ends With Us, which Adonis took as a challenge, deciding they would fight next week. Shanti is such a clown, man. The character is a lot of fun. I'm curious to see where these guys go. I'm more interested in Ashanti the Adonis than I have been at any point in his entire career. And that just speaks to the success Shawn Michaels has booking NXT right now. Eddie Thorpe got a video package calling himself a new age Native American, saying he's trying to go beyond the stereotype, but he refuses to assimilate to the world outside the reservation. Total word salad. He said he likes DJing because music and dance are important to his people and his culture. Lexus King said music is great, the right type of music, but EDM sucks. How is he a heel? I mean, that's accurate. I legitimately rewound the first part of this segment 3 times. I'm not exaggerating, to try to understand what the hell Thorpe was saying. Whoever wrote that treated it like they were writing a formal, like nonsensical character summary for a TV show or something. It was dreadful. If Thorpe wants to present himself as a Native American but not be defined by his heritage, great. Maybe he should stop referring to himself as one every single time he gets a video package or a vignette. Just be Native American, do your thing, you know what I mean? I remain disappointed in his lack of development since joining NXT. There's no direction and probably one of the most boring guys on the entire roster. It doesn't help that every single time he ever had momentum, it was quickly stopped for one reason or another. But this, as far as I'm concerned, certainly did not help. So then we got Thorpe against King. Thorpe hit a snap German suplex and a tomahawk elbow drop. King snapped Thorpe's still injured hand, then he hit the coronation to win. This was rough. It was the second time these guys fought a 3-minute match. They've been feuding for like over a month, and none of it's working for Thorpe. If anything, it's dragging King down. It's rough all around, and I just, again, don't understand the purpose of 2 3-minute matches. So what, you're going to do a rubber match with a stipulation and it's going to go 10? Why does it need to go 10 when both guys have beat the other in 3 minutes? And there were really 3 matches on NXT that were all short. It was this one, the Lola Vice Paxley match at 220, the Izzy Dame Brindley Reese at 412. That one I'm okay with because both of them are still very much developmental talent. I just don't understand why the other 2 matches are so short. I mean, they pack a lot into NXT, from matches, storytelling, the whole 9 yards. And all the other matches got like a decent amount of time. But as you improve the quality, it's okay to have developmental segments, but the segments that aren't developmental shouldn't be short, theoretically. Maybe things will change with the CW, maybe they won't. It's going to be interesting to see how NXT develops over the next 2 months, coming out of, let's say, the first 2 or 3 weeks of that contract. So that wraps up NXT this week. Still a little bit until we get to No Mercy. There will not be an Ultimate Preview for that next week. It's still a little bit away. But of course, next week will be the Ultimate Preview for AEW All In, which allows us to transition right to that brand now. So we're going to talk about AEW for the entire week. Obviously, Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage, we mix them up based on storyline. So that is how we will bring you through these 5 hours of televised wrestling. In terms of matches this week, 7 out of 16 had storyline relevance. That's 44%. By far the best mark AEW has given us in a long time. It should really ideally be even better this coming week, given it's building for All In and All Out simultaneously. I wouldn't say that the match relevance made much of a difference on Dynamite because that show generally features relevant matches anyway. It did make Collision more watchable for yours truly. There's no question about that. There was also another unique production thing this week for AEW. The final 24 minutes of Dynamite, including the overrun, did not have a commercial. Really interesting from a scheduling standpoint. The overrun usually does a lower rating than the final quarter hour, but both are generally significantly lower than the show open. So I wonder whether this has any ratings impact. It certainly did make for a better and more interesting toward the end of the show viewing experience. By the time we finish this podcast, it's quite possible the ratings are out. We got delayed for the taping on Thursday, so maybe we will discuss both NXT and AEW at the end of this show. Let's get to what happened on television. On Rampage, Wheeler Yuta beat Rocky Romero in 11 minutes. Bryan Danielson was on commentary. Yuta countered sliced bread into a cross-leg tombstone piledriver. Crossing the legs added absolutely nothing to the move. Then he won with Bryan's cattle mutilation, a nothing match that happened for no reason. On Collision, Swerve Strickland fought Tomohiro Ishii in an eliminator match. This was an open challenge. Lots of suplexes and brainbusters here. Swerve ultimately won with house call in 12 minutes. Appropriate time for these two. As some of you know, Ishii was one of my favorites from New Japan about 5 years ago. He has slowed down massively of late, and this was far below my expectation for what these two could do together, but it's also just possible. Like, Ishii's 48 now. You know, he's not in his early 40s like when I started watching him, or 43 when I really became a fan of him. So that does impact, the performance. On Collision, Bryan Danielson sat down for an interview with Jim Ross. He said he would require neck surgery before the end of the year. There's 4.5 months left in 2024, and he's about to challenge for a world title. Don't forget. I appreciated the realism, but given the match itself has already been telegraphed, this similarly gave away like the reign length. He also said he's the most mentally strong that he's been in his entire career. Wasn't as strong or long as the Swerve equivalent interview, but it was still worthwhile. There was also a video package about Bryan's career set to good riddance, better known as Time of Your Life. On Dynamite, it was quite well done. It's tough, though, to have a career retrospective and completely skip half of the person's career, the most successful part of their career, their entire WWE tenure. I understand why. I'm just saying it was a shame. On Dynamite, Swerve fought Yuta. This main evented with Danielson in the crowd. Strong action both ways for a bit. Swerve eventually just took over. He had a house call, then waited for Yuta to sit up, hit a second house call. Then he pulled him up for a third house call, kicking his head and crouching over his body, knocking him out cold with repeated fists until a referee stoppage. Danielson ran in, Swerve scurried. Then Strickland said that was an example of him being the most dangerous man in AEW. He said he would do the exact same thing in front of Bryan's daughter in his last match, forcing his retirement. When Bryan turned his back to check on Yuta, Swerve ran back down the ramp, knocked him out with a house call, and then he did the yes hand gesture slowly himself, mocking Danielson and the fans. Hey, everyone, guess what? Swerve's a heel again. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. It's a sensible character alteration because he's consistently had the mindset that he will do whatever it takes to win and retain the title. That sent him to crazy lengths against Hangman Page, and now it has him out for blood against someone he said he respects. It tracks. I just wanted to have some fun. But the match was whatever. It was kind of ass, to be honest. The house call barrage was cool. I thought the referee came in way too late to stop it, with Wheeler just getting bludgeoned while he was unconscious. MMA officials stop fights way faster than that. The house call to Danielson at the end was a chef's kiss. It was an exclamation point on the entire segment. Probably the most successful segment on the overall show that continued building stakes at All In. On Dynamite, Hangman fought Jay Lethal. This challenge was issued on Rampage, coming off Hangman's brawl with Jeff Jarrett from last week. Lethal was cutting a promo backstage before the match with his crew when Hangman attacked both him and Jarrett with a microphone pack, leading directly into the match. AEW basically wanted to do a backstage single camera shot like WWE, which is why they did it this way. Lethal hit 5 tope suicidas. Hangman immediately hit Deadeye on the ring apron. He eventually hit a discus lariat and buckshot lariat for the win. Strong, entertaining match. Good reestablishment victory for Page, just because he's taken so many L's recently. Feels like he may wind up fighting for the title or fighting Swerve at All Out. Lethal got a bit fucked up during this, either from a Death Valley driver or the discus lariat. Hopefully he's okay. Let this serve as a reminder. As we saw Wednesday night, Hangman did nothing wrong. He remains the actual legitimate babyface in this feud with Swerve. On Dynamite, there was an MJF and Will Ospreay video package. Ospreay talked about bringing AEW into a new generation. MJF said Ospreay lacked what it takes to be a true champion and top the business, promising to use Tiger Driver 91 in their match. Ospreay also told Kyle Fletcher no one deserves to be hit with the move, so he's still having this ridiculous internal struggle. MJF, over the last few weeks, by the way, has defended the title in Mexico and England, which made me laugh a bit because the guy who's now the American champion has made the title more international in a month than anyone else who's had it throughout basically its history. Face-to-face is the go-home for next week. After this segment, Pac declared himself the number one contender for the International Championship, but said Ospreay went behind his back to get his shot. That is not what happened. Ospreay got screwed, and he was given a rematch. Pac said he's sick of being overlooked and treated like a bum, so he will fight the winner of this match 2 weeks later at All Out. Really not the same as an Englishman getting a match at Wembley Stadium. I'm a little surprised. I understand what happened with the Lucha Brothers and Death Triangle, and I get it. But you really can't find another singles match for this guy at Wembley Stadium, even if it's on the buy-in or whatever they're calling the first show. A little frustrating as far as I'm concerned. I would assume he feels the same way. On Dynamite, Mariah May got a promo package saying she's copying Toni Storm's success, but not her failures, including losing last year at All In. As she burned the Storm-like gear she used to wear, she said Toni's greatest mistake was being alive the same time as her, and while May will forget Storm, Toni will be stuck with the memory of being bested by her. Then we saw Mina Shirakawa backstage randomly. She said she hasn't spoken to either of them recently, but is heartbroken because she still loves them both. She didn't want either of them to get seriously hurt. The video package was extremely well done. Something I will note is nearly all of the video packages on Dynamite had like a similar tone to them. I think a little differentiation would have been nice, but Mariah's was the best of the bunch. Bringing back Mina seemingly for no reason makes me believe she will factor into the result at All In. Otherwise, there's literally no reason for her to be around whatsoever. She's Mariah's friend. She's Toni's acquaintance. Let's not forget. On Dynamite, Kazuchika Okada and Claudio Castagnoli went face-to-face. Claudio on Rampage challenged Okada for his Continental Championship, not at All In, but the Dynamite beforehand. Not only am I legitimately surprised the match is not on the All In card, given, it's Okada, but it also made zero sense that you would make a title challenge if you're Claudio and not have it at a major stadium show, instead challenging for a Dynamite that happens to be 4 days before it. Claudio said a whole bunch of nothing when they met up backstage. Kazu gave him John Cena's nice speech line. He put himself over, and I believe he said he would come out of the Continental Classic with the title. He punctuated it with "good luck, bitch." When Okada left, Castagnoli said he wants the true Rainmaker, not the joke-making guy he just experienced. That's what he should have said in his original promo. Would have been a lot more interesting. Okada did well speaking English. I'm glad he finally got the opportunity to speak somewhat at length, which hasn't really happened before. Claudio continues to be immensely poor on the mic, much better taped than live like a number of AEW talents are. On Collision, Hikaru Shida beat a jobber in 100 seconds. Why? I have no idea. Shida later said she needs real competition and a chance to go back to Wembley Stadium. She said she's the ace of the division. She called out Mercedes Moné for a TBS title match. The match was official literally 5 seconds later. Total joke. Solid promo from Shida, decent reasoning, zero need for the match that preceded it. We got that TBS title match on Dynamite. Moné against Shida. This opened the show. Mercedes changed her hair to a burgundy color. Camille distracted Shida, allowing Moné to catch her with a Meteora off the apron ringside. After a backstabber, Shida avoided another Meteora inside, only to eat one with Mercedes flying off the ropes. Shida came back with a Falcon Arrow, then hit Camille with a kendo stick. Mercedes stole it from her, allowing Camille to boot Shida. Moné then hit Moné Maker to retain the title. Quality showcase for both of them. Real sensible and expected finish to excuse the loss. It was a really nice start to the show. Probably like 3.5 stars and a B if you're keeping track at home. Britt Baker's music hit after the bell, but she did not come out. So Camille pulled a person in a Sting mask out of the crowd, assuming it was her, and beat the shit out of this person. Britt instead came from behind Mercedes, and even though she had her totally in her sights, she stands on the ring apron and slowly starts putting her glove on. Mercedes saw her, ignored her because it wasn't time to attack yet, then turned around and went after her when it was time. And of course, Camille saved Moné from the mandible, I'm forgetting what the name of the move is, from Britt Baker to end the segment. There will obviously be no follow-up on who the hell Camille beat the shit out of from the crowd. This was another AEW segment where, if it was thought through a little bit more, an obvious eye-roll mistake could have easily been avoided. Why the hell would Britt not storm the ring, start beating the shit out of Mercedes, then put the glove on and go for the mandible? It's not like you can easily put someone in that. And by the way, maybe she should have attacked Mercedes, then thrown Camille into the steel steps, and then gone after that. I don't know why you would run to the ring, stop on the apron. You're trying to attack someone. Stop on the apron, casually put on your glove, then step inside and obviously not be able to get your submission. It just defies logic. On Rampage, Darby Allin beat the Butcher in 10 minutes with Code Red and a coffin drop. Should not have taken this much for a double number one contender to beat a low-card nobody. On Collision, Darby and Hologram beat the Premier Athletes in 9 minutes. Hologram pinned Josh Woods with a crucifix. No reason for the match. No reason for a finish like that against a nobody. On Collision, AEW seemingly replayed the Jack Perry video package vignette, whatever you want to call it, that got interrupted by a Taco Bell ad during Dynamite last week. I preferred the taco version. Then on Dynamite, Darby got a promo package where he ranted about not knowing who Jungle Boy was on the Independent, saying he only got hired because he was a California wrestler. He said Jack is worthless and added nothing to AEW. Pretty well spoken from him. He's much better taped instead of live. Darby made his way back to the ring for no reason, just because there wasn't an announced match or a segment, nothing. Perry attacked him from behind, justified, as far as I'm concerned, given all the shit Darby said about him. They fought backstage on the road case. Jack closed a garage door lightly on him before being stopped from running a road case into him by about half a dozen security guards. Perry challenged for a coffin match as he was dragged away. Attack was solid. The idea of wanting to beat Darby at his own game, that works for me as well. You know they're going to figure out a way to do some type of real glass Crimea River spot. This allows for the DQ stipulation without making it basic. I'm not sure it's going to change my prediction for the match. I'm going to need to think on that. But a pretty solid build on the penultimate show here. On Rampage, Willow Nightingale said frustration is the main feeling she has when it comes to Chris Statlander. Ishii walked in saying Stokely, intimating that he doesn't like Hathaway either. On Collision, Stat and Stoke learned from Lexi Nair, not any of the 100 authority figures, not from Tony Schiavone or Christopher Daniels. Lexi Nair tells them that they're booked for a mixed tag team match at All In 0 Hour. Okay, they're calling it 0 Hour. Buy-in is for Double or Nothing. I always get them mixed up. So a random partner for Willow instead of, Orange Cassidy or any of the real conglomeration that's there weekly, who she'd been alongside recently, Orange in particular. And then it's a kickoff match. It's not even on the main card. Now, I don't mind that specifically because it is a random mixed tag, and that's where it belongs. As long as they're giving us Willow stat in a legitimate singles match on the main all-out card, I'll be okay with it. I assume that will be the plan. On Collision, Kip Sabian said he's trying to get back in action and make a name for himself. Nick Wayne came up saying he's a champion while Sabian is still a nobody after 5 years. He said Kip's dad died a loser, and he would go out the same way. Nice enough for a low-card story. Only problem, Sabian got bitched here, and he's going to lose the match. So then what? He's just done again? That's most likely what's going to happen. On Collision, House of Black fought Bang Bang Gang in a trios #1 contendership. Christian Cage was the special guest referee, and this main evented. Malachi Black hit coup de grace. The heels hit 310 to Yuma with Juice Robinson involved. They all exchanged signatures, so Christian then initiated a standing 10 count for all the guys. Buddy Matthews was the only one to get up to his feet at 9, so Cage straight up speared him, counted to 10, called a no contest. Major heat, really inventive match finish. Patriarchy brought in chairs as they further brutalized the 6 would-be challengers, multiple shots, finishing moves, all the way until the show ended. The last move was kill switch on Malachi Black into a chair. Match was solid. The finish was really cool and unique. The lone issue I had was this. Christian is like a 30-year veteran. The guy has seen it all. He's done it all. He certainly would know that a champion causing a no contest in a #1 contendership match will lead to a triple threat. So all he really did was make his title of defense more difficult. Now, given the booking of Buddy's injury and Malachi taking that move, expectation for me is that House of Black will win those titles at All In. We'll give you an official prediction next week. On Dynamite, Christian with the Patriarchy assumed there'd be another set of challengers. He also promised to win the world title and hold every championship in the company simultaneously. I am not understanding why a decision has not been made, given it was 4 days since the aforementioned match, and we all know exactly what's coming. Put a pin in that. On Dynamite, the tag team championships were on the line, the Young Bucks defending against Acclaimed. The Faces attacked from behind during the entrance and threw the Bucks off the stage. Daddy Ass came down about a minute later. He got ejected after commercial when he was caught holding a chair thrown at him by Nick Jackson. The Bucks dominated for a while until Max Caster went on a hot tag run. The referee got knocked out. That led to an immediate low blow on Caster. The referee sat back up and looked straight forward for a few different times, actually, only to go back down because it wasn't time for him to look up. Matt Jackson grabbed the title, so FTR ran down to stop him. After taking a spit to the face, Dax Harwood attacked for a DQ, with the two face teams arguing and shoving after the fact. Now, it was obvious, given the angle that was already developed for weeks on Collision, that we were ultimately headed, I thought, to a triple threat at All In. I was confused why this match was happening on Dynamite and kayfabe, though. Acclaimed have been #1 contenders forever. All In was 11 days after that show. Why the hell would they not demand their match that they've been waiting for be at the pay-per-view? Maybe I missed a little bit of storytelling. Maybe they said they want to fight them as soon as possible. And please inform me if that's the case. I don't want to be unfairly critical. But it seemed to me like extremely poor logic. Immediately after the match, Christopher Daniels was interviewed backstage. He said he had a simple solution. He made FTR against Acclaimed in a #1 contendership match, I believe on Collision. Why the fuck is CD making that decision? He's supposed to be the voice of Tony Khan, not a matchmaker. And how the fuck is that fair to babyface Acclaimed? They just got screwed out of a title shot. Now they have to fight to get another title shot. That is totally nonsensical. And finally, what did I just say about the trios titles? They had 4 days to come up with a solution to that situation and did absolutely nothing. But here, CD makes a snap decision without even consulting Tony immediately after this transpired. As quality as the matches might be, as well as individual storylines may hit here and there in AEW, the lack of logic on this program is astounding, and it ruins, for me, the viewing experience. It's fine to suspend the disbelief. Don't treat me like a moron. Perhaps worst of all, there is no combination of these teams that I actually want to see wrestle. I don't want this match on the card. Simple as that. On Collision, Thunder Rosa fought Deonna Purrazzo in a Texas bull rope match. Deonna said she would outclass Thunder once again, saying she's a pedestal above her. Actually, a pretty good promo here. Dustin Rhodes narrated a video package ahead of the match. Rosa bladed a few minutes in. Purrazzo got pulled off the ropes into a stack of chairs, then run into another in the corner before eating a dropkick to the head with a chair. She also bladed before hitting a tight powerbomb and a gotch pile driver without a kickout, though the referee just picked up his arm. The crowd didn't even react. The spot of the match came when Rosa used the rope and bell for a bulldog off the ropes through a table. She added a shoulder breaker and got the 1-2-3 in 11 minutes. Thunder cried to herself after the bell in happiness while she was gushing blood. It was the AEW match of the weekend by a significant margin for me at 3.5 stars and a B. Long-term story, solid development, quality match, some violence, strong finish, and an emotional win to conclude a feud. Hopefully, this is the end of this feud. It has lasted for a while, but while there were some low points, it was successful overall, which is not always the case for that division. On Dynamite, Orange Cassidy, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong fought in a triple threat match, the winner receiving the number one spot in the Casino Gauntlet match. I was wondering, do you want one of the first two spots? I know the match technically can end at any time, but it feels like 4 or 5 would be the most sought after spot if one was logically trying to increase their odds. I digress. Strong Uranagi to Orange into O'Reilly. Cassidy came back with Stundog Millionaire and a pin fest with Kyle that ended in a rear naked choke. Roddy turned them both over into a double stronghold, more like a lion tamer for 10 seconds. Orange then dropped an elbow on Kyle to break up a standing guillotine. Kingdom came down and slid a chair in the ring, so Mark Briscoe and Ishii ran them off. O'Reilly gave up an armbar on Cassidy for a heel hook on Strong. That was part of an extended fast-paced sequence. The faces agreed to take out Roddy, but he and Kyle ended up doing their old high-low combo for a double cover and no count. Orange, for some reason, took a pump knee for Kyle, pushed him out of the way. That made zero sense. He ended up pulling O'Reilly out of a submission into a crucifix for the win, and Kyle threw a fit. It was the best AEW TV match of the entire week, and it was right up there with the NXT tag team match for best overall. This should theoretically lead to an O'Reilly turn because all this guy has done is lose every big match that he's been given since he returned from injury. Wouldn't make sense for him to stay babyface. I would have preferred anyone other than Orange winning because the opposite is true of him. He pretty much wins every single feud that he's in. He almost never loses. But it was a definite banger, super entertaining for the middle of the show, right on the border, 4 stars A-, 4.25 stars A. I'm going to say A- here. On Collision, FTR beat the Outrunners in 9 minutes. Yes, the Outrunners in 9 minutes. This after the Outrunners actually got a pretty cool 80s style vignette before the match. I should have mentioned this earlier with Acclaimed. I forgot. Sue me. On Dynamite, Hook came out with a bandage over his eye from the Chris Jericho fireball. He then grabbed the camera physically and yelled into it saying he can't see out of one eye, but he can out of the other, and he wants the FTW title back. Jericho did the whole fake accepting of a fight thing, saying he wouldn't fight him in Virginia, but he would at Wembley Stadium. Zero reaction to that announcement. Jericho's stipulations, though, were that it would be Hook's final chance at the FTW title. He'd have to leave the Jericho vortex forever, and he'd first have to fight Big Bill on Dynamite. Hook accepted, and he used Jericho's old line, "You will never, ever be the same again," except he didn't utilize any of the intonation that makes it work as an impression. "You will never, ever be the same again." This was fucking horrendous. Maybe you think that of my impression, but this segment was horrendous. Worst part of AEW all week. I'm not sure what was worse, actually. No, you know what? I do know what was worse. Hook's promo. It was dog shit. It reeks of a guy who has not had anywhere near enough exposure or opportunity to improve. He remains acceptable in the ring, but the character and personality is flat as hell. Use the spotlight all you want. It doesn't make him cool. It doesn't make him a good talker. And it's not going to get any better with him speaking once every 6 months. There's a lot of people in AEW who could truly benefit from a developmental system, whether that's NXT, an extended feature run on Ring of Honor, somewhere in Japan, wherever. Hook might be atop that list. We all knew this match was coming for All In, and at least it's going to be the end of the feud. It seems dumb for Jericho to not insist that Hook would be alone ringside because he was just listing out stipulations. And if you want to talk about low stakes, leaving the Jericho vortex and not being able to hold the FTW title, okay. The only part of this that entertained was the final line. And again, that was just the line, not the delivery. On Rampage, Dustin Rhodes cut a promo saying he's happy to be working and finding success with the Von Erichs and Sammy Guevara, but he's greedy and he also wants the ROH tag team titles. The Kingdom overheard and talked shit to his face. Matt Taven said he would shatter his dreams. Get it? Goldust. And then Mike Bennett kicked him in the nuts. Great. On Collision, Roosh fought Preston Vance. Don Callis criticized Roosh for losing in a backstage confrontation taped after last week's Dynamite. Roosh said he wants to be the best, and Callis demanded he do whatever is necessary to win. He gave him one last chance to prove himself by hospitalizing Preston Vance. You know, the guy in his faction that just stopped being a faction. Anyway, Roosh won with bull's horns in 4 minutes. In that time, Vance somehow bladed. I counted this as having storyline development, given the segment and their past, even if it was only thin and with 24 hours of call time. Callis was pleased backstage, so at least he's actually found someone who's willing to be a heel. On Rampage, Saraya beat Nyla Rose in 10 minutes. Harley Cameron swiped her legs and held them down for a 1-2-3 on an attempted suplex over the ropes. I'm glad that Nyla is getting regular TV time again. She is losing to absolutely everyone, but she's at least doing it on television. What happened to Sky Blue and Red Velvet and Queen Aminata? And you get the point. Anyway, this was awful. On Collision, MXM Collective got into it with Top Flight again. Leo Rush walked in and showed them a text message from Tony Khan saying the match was happening next week. Why is Tony messaging Leo, who has zero power or authority, and I could be wrong, I don't believe is officially aligned with Top Flight? Why is he texting him a match booking when you can give it to Tony Schiavone or Christopher Daniels or Lexi Nair, apparently? Fuck knows. On Rampage, Private Party beat the Dawson brothers, whoever they are, in 4 minutes. Dumb match that had no relevance. So that wraps up AEW this week. I found the totality of the 5 hours, primarily the 4 hours of Collision and Dynamite, to be more cohesive than they had been. There was a lot of storytelling on Dynamite. That's not to say there wasn't a lot of wrestling, because there still was. There was a good amount, actually. But they did spend time building All In. That was appreciated. And I am pretty interested to see what the go-home for All In looks like next week on Dynamite. As far as I know, outside of that number one contendership, nothing major on deck for Collision or Rampage. So with all that said, before we wrap up the show, as mentioned, ratings did come out while we were taping. So let's go ahead and go over those briefly for NXT and AEW. NXT did 617,000 viewers in a 0.17 demo. So the rating was the highest since before the Olympics, basically, before they moved to sci-fi. But they still haven't really gotten back to that 650, 700,000 range. They did hold from May 21st all the way through June 18th. Now, there were competition reasons and booking reasons, things that happened on the show for that. You know, Joe Hendry continues to be on NXT. I think the shine has kind of come off on him a little bit. Not to say that he's gotten bad or isn't doing good promos, but, you know, it's only unique for so long when you have crossover talent from TNA. It felt like they did a lot in a big rush, and now they're mostly gone, with Hendry being the one remaining. And it's like, okay, they sing the song and he has a pretty decent match or a pretty decent promo. There's only so far to go with him. So I know people have been really bullish on Hendry, and I think he's been doing a good job in NXT. There's no question about it. And he's done certainly a good job in TNA as well. But putting him at the top of your card with Ethan Page, that's not exactly going to bring eyeballs, especially when you have this main roster and a ton of talent that can be utilized, and you're just choosing not to, which is odd, because it is clear when decent main roster talent is brought down to NXT. And when I say decent, I mean with fan appeal, not wrestlers. There's plenty of good wrestlers in NXT. But when you bring in decent names, it does help the ratings. And I know that the USA Network kind of contract is winding down, although, of course, they still do have a deal with USA for SmackDown. I understand that. At the same time, you still want momentum to carry you into the CW. And right now, I wouldn't say NXT has momentum. The men's division, from a single standpoint, needs a lot of help. The women's division, it's like they're just walking in place. I don't know. I don't understand why Stephanie Vaquer has not debuted yet. My assumption is there's a specific booking plan for her. And I understand she had to move from Mexico to the United States and get set up. It is not easy. She needs a work visa. I get all that fully. Okay. It's been a while, though, and to not have her on there at all is surprising. Julia finishes up her work in Japan this coming week, so certainly she could show up at No Mercy or the Go Home show before No Mercy. We've discussed that. Delta, it looks like, from Australia, has moved to the United States, so they could do a 1-2-3 succession debut at No Mercy, one after another, and revitalize this women's division. But, you know, they've moved around some talent that really should have been getting title matches, and they've brought up some other talent, you know, to give them opportunities, and they're doing fine. It's just not making for the most compelling television. So from the main card, in NXT. There's improvement that can be made, and that's really the way the ratings are going to go up. That said, this was in line with their rating for pretty much all of July. It's just still about 100,000 down from where they were in May and June, end of May into all of June. And that is really where NXT should want to be. And a similar thing can really be said about AEW right now, because the rating for Dynamite this past Wednesday came in at 703,000 with a 0.23 demo. Now, that is obviously substantially higher than the last 2 weeks going head-to-head with the Olympics, as one would expect. But it's still, I'm looking at it, 83,000 viewers lower than July 24th. They ran those two huge back-to-back shows. They loaded up the shows on July 17th and July 24th. Those averaged 790,000. So they're 80,000 below that and 0.03 to 4 on the demo below that. And their biggest show of the year is coming up next week. So that's obviously, I mean, I saw people parading like it was a great rating or something, like AEW was back. It's the same rating, basically, they had every week from June 12th to July 10th. Just 680, 688, 691, 703. Outside of that one weird week where they did 502. It's down from their new high, which is pretty much 800,000. So they're 100,000 below where they want to be. And NXT is 100,000 below where they want to be. So both of them, I think, improvement can be made. But AEW, I will say, despite the ratings being whatever they have been, for the vast majority of the last month, I think the last 5 weeks, let's say, they've been putting on a really good product on Dynamite, much better than it was the month and two prior to that. So as long as they deliver next week on the go home to All In, and they start delivering coming out of All In, going into All Out, Tony Khan has promised multiple major announcements. All In Texas is certainly one of them. The TV deal, I would assume, is another. It's possible there's a signing or something as well. We certainly will find out in due time. So folks, that wraps up this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. A couple notes for next week. We will be back on Tuesday with your WWE show. Vintage Chris Vanini has confirmed he will be there for the entire episode. Also on Thursday, 1 week from now, same bat time, same bat channel, we'll talk NXT and we'll have your AEW All In Ultimate Preview. And I did confirm with Vintage, he will be part of that show as well. So you get two Vintage for one next week right here on the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. On the way out, allow me to remind you that this show
It's all about Defy.
So head over to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave a 5-star rating on Apple. Take a little extra time. Leave a 5-star written review. If you do, we will read it live right here on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube at Getting Overcast and follow us on Twitter at Getting Overcast for episode drops, news analysis highlights, all of that good stuff. Please also remember,
I happen to love the number 5.
and I hope you do as well, because for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year, you can become an official Getting Overhead. Just visit buymeacoffee.com/gettingover. Sign up. You'll get bonus audio, the fastest 5 minutes in professional wrestling, instant reactions to every major TV show, and exclusive news posts on Friday. But not only that, subscribing, becoming an official Getting Overhead supports the show financially, and we would greatly appreciate that. Thank you all for listening to this edition of the Getting Over Wrestling podcast. It is time for the Silver King to sign off and leave you with just 3 final words. Bye for now.